Hi. Hi. Are we okay now there? Back there? Sweet. Okay. So, my name is Nir. I come from mostly sunny Tel Aviv. And today we're going to talk about creating digital products. Before we start, how about maybe I get to know you a little bit. So, like, who here is a designer? Very nice. People doing UX, user experience? Very nice. And project managers? Very nice. And like the rest, like where do they come from? More or less. But we're pretty much all good. So most of you?
For me, I'm a business analyst.
Business analyst. Yeah. Excellent. Sorry. So most of you have done digital product before, or like engaged in the work of creating a digital product. So let me tell you a little bit about myself with a few numbers. So I'm a very proud father to an amazingly cute young boy named Ben, which means that for the last year and a half, I've been getting around 4 hours of sleep a night. I used to be an electrical engineer, but for the last 10 years, I've been as part of this industry as a UX designer in different roles. The last 6 of them I spent working at a company called Wix. Now, how many of you know Wix? Nice, okay. So Wix, which is a do-it-yourself platform for building websites, probably the largest one in the world, which is basically an ecosystem consisting of 20 different companies that each trying to solve a specific problem for business owners, and they're all part of the Wix ecosystem unified experience, okay? Now you can imagine that for us at the UX studio, we own the product experience, okay? Taking charge of both the functional and the visual of each of these projects. And you can imagine the challenges coming from such a complex ecosystem, supporting around 16 languages and counting, right? With different teams, each with their own environment, their own like style of work, even their own technologies, which they compete against niche product markets, like for example, e-commerce solution, right? Restaurants owner solution, photographer, etc. And they all need to be a part of a unified, great user experience of Wix. And in order to face this challenge, us at the UX Studio, we have almost 70 UX designers across the world, with the latest branch opening here in Kiev. And as part of the Wix culture, we always try to reach out for the local UX community and basically get to know each other. Okay, like what drives you, how do you view the role of UX, and this is why I'm here. And today, we're going to talk about, I would call it imagining your product. Okay, the first phase of creating the product, of prototyping. So, for me, it all starts with this. Context. Okay, so it comes from Latin. It means basically to weave together. And I think it plays a crucial role when you're trying to conceive a product, to create a product for other people to use. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this context issue. And I want to divide it into 2 main categories. The first one being background context. Okay, background context is everything relates to culture, gender, hobbies, the skill set that the user comes with. Basically, it's everything that the user comes with before he's starting to use our product. Like, for example, how certain culture use a truck, right? If I want to design a truck that's going to be used in this culture, it's quite crucial for me to know how they're doing this, okay? The second and more tricky part is the immediate context. Okay, immediate context is like everything that it's basically how we, us humans, learn about stuff from the surrounding environment, okay? From spatial awareness, from the whole scenario of the usage, from the sequence of events, okay? Like for example, does any of you know what a shoe means? I didn't. Can you see it? Okay. How about now? This is it's a shoe. What this means, okay? Basically, it means to avoid something, especially in a bad way. Okay, like I don't know about you guys, but like when I learned English, like part of my grammar test, it's actually called learning from context. Okay, and this is sort of like an immediate context example because you can guess the meaning of the word because of its surrounding. Now, it's an actual law. It's called Sturgeon's law. He used to be a science fiction writer. And basically what he said, that 90% of everything is crude, or as most people consider it, is crap. Okay? And even though it's a bit harsh, it's hard to see why it's true, right? A lot of digital products we're using aren't that good. And I think that it's mainly because of the context gap. Okay? So the context gap is sort of, you don't even see this font, but it's what we as planners know or think about the people who are using it versus what the people who are actually using it know, or how they're actually using what we're doing. Okay? So this is part of the most crucial thing that hurts most product, right? Is like this gap between us and them, okay? And in order to create good digital product, you need to bridge that gap. So what do? So the first step in every project is doing a proper research. Okay, researching your user, researching the competitor, researching the entire scenery of what you're doing. And it's a really good way to handle this background context, right? You can understand most of it. In order to deal with the immediate context, the first thing we do is what we call lean state of mind, okay? Anybody heard about the Lean Startup by Eric Ries? Okay, so in 2011, Eric Ries coined the term, the Lean Startup, which everybody caught on. And he praises the fact that because we never know how the market and the people are actually gonna accept what we're doing, if it's useful for them or not, what you should do is do really, really lean stuff. He invented this concept of minimum viable product, or MVP, which is basically the most basic building brick that shows some value to the user. And why you want to use some basic? Because the key is doing stuff really fast, and it aimed towards learning. Okay, we want to learn as fast as you can. So lean state of mind, because we never know what's going to happen, and we always want to test and iterate. And second is the flow. Okay, so what is the flow? So it's become quite a common practice this day to present everything as a flow of screens, for example. And why do we do it? We do it because looking just at a single screen is not enough to get into the user seat, right? What you want to do is get into the user seat. So a long time, us at Wix, as many companies around the world, instead of presenting screen as a screen, we presented stuff as part of a full flow, a sequence of events that the user encounter. And like, for example, from this, we're using an app called InVision. How many people are using InVision? Yeah, it's like one of the newcomers and new rising star. And basically, that's what InVision has been doing. It's been helping us to present flows in a way that's manageable and easy to notice. Okay, that's part of the view that they allow. Now, what we see in recent years, how many people are using Sketch, by the way? Yeah, I love Sketch, okay? So besides Sketch, which as we can all see, it's been on a rise, then since even Photoshop introduced the artboard feature. Okay, now, what artboards allows us to do is sort of, I will coin a term from like my engineering days, it's helps us to shorten the feedback loop. Okay, instead of working on a single screen and then uploading it as a PNG or uploading to envision the full flow, you can actually see it as you work. Okay, what you don't really see here is something taken from out of a product, and you can see like each screen in a flow, and it's really useful because instead of working somewhere else and seeing how your product behaves somewhere else, you can actually work in context. And working in context is what I want to talk about. It's a good place to stop and talk about sort of the flow method, okay? So we're talking about prototyping, okay, or the first phase of envisioning the product. And the essence of the product, of the flow method, is sort of a small slight of focus on what we're doing, but I found it to yield great results in certain cases. And the essence means defining and designing products should be flow-driven. and should contain contextual animations, I would say usually. Okay, let's break this down into steps, more or less. So you need to always start with research. Okay, there's no way around it. Then, and this is a crucial part, you need to decide on your most common flow. It's not always easy, but almost always there's a common flow. And from that moment on, during the prototype phase, you would stick with it. Okay? I use a tool that helps you to animate fast. Okay, even auto-animate. How many people here have been using Keynote? Very good. Then it's going to be interesting. So like I love Keynote for that purpose because it has like an auto magic animate feature, and it's really useful to do it between screens. And then test and iterate. As we said, Ling is all it counts, and we need to assume that we don't really know how other people are going to accept our product. What's the motivation for this? Okay, so in the digital products, like in life, everything is a flow, a sequence of events. Okay? Motion is like the narrator of the story. It tells the story of the sequence, and it's important. Okay, and often, like in life, the big picture, like the sum is greater than the parts. Okay, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And a lot of the time, the flow is more important than any of the screens. In order to demonstrate what I'm talking about, how about we talk about a quick case study? So, I'm an amateur guitar player, I admit. Anyone here also like play some kind of instrument, do any kind of music? Okay, so basically, once we're done with this, go and learn something to play. Okay, I can't talk enough about how much it gave to my life. Okay, so me and a good friend of mine who is actually an iOS developer, we used to jam together all the time. And one day after we jammed, we started a conversation about the state of iPhone music creation app. Okay, I'm going to talk about a side project that I did with him. And this is like a basic view of the scenery of iPhone apps that was these days. Okay, so on the left, you got like really simple stuff, like voice memo that you can just like record one channel and keep playing it, and that's it. And on the far end, we've got more complex, which is like a mini studio, something like GarageBand and something like this. Okay, and the middle part, it's really interesting and really wide, and you got all kind of, trust me, really, really great application, but most of them are quite complex. Okay, and when I say complex, it doesn't mean that they're complex. Like for example, this one, which is called Take. As you can see, it's also beautiful and also like pretty useful, but it didn't fit the main common usage that we wanted for ourselves. Okay, so let's start with the goals definition for this project. So we wanted something that we can use ourselves. And our common scenario was the following, okay? Let's say that even as a pro musician, okay, maybe I know all the pro equipment programs like Cubase or Logic or whatever, but I still, from time to time, want to jam by myself, or even if I've got like a quick idea in my mind and I would just want to get it out there as fast as I can. So the main scenario is like, say I'm sitting with myself, I've got like 7 minutes between my kid needs to go to sleep and I can just grab my guitar and start jamming with it, okay? So I want to play a few chords, right, some rhythm guitar, and then I want to play over it, let's say some solo, some lead, maybe some drum and stuff like this. And I want to do it fast, right? Instead of, for example, going to GarageBand, I need to start by defining the rhythm, the tempo, and then adding a channel. And then recording it, going back to the beginning, recording another channel, okay? It's not as simple and as fluid as we wanted it to be. And we have to do it fast because we both have a full day jobs and it's a side project. And if you don't achieve something fast, it just doesn't work. And simplicity and design is sort of like a core value because this is who we are, okay? So after this conversation, I went back home the same night and sat down on Keynote as my tool of choice. And I want to share with you the first flow that I did. So at first I imagined that like you can only record the first channel at first. Okay, that's all you can do, just record the channel. Then I have sort of like a vision that the channel should live in parallel to one another. Okay, so I just try to mimic the movement of the channels being adjacent to one another. And I thought about maybe we can color code each channel so it would be pretty cool. Maybe we can play with color palettes as well. And you don't really see the colors properly, but they are pretty vibrant in the beginning. So basically like half an hour or an hour into the project, this is what we had. Okay, so I shared it with my friend, and as you can see, it's like really, really basic and rough, but it's sort of like a flow of an actual usage of the app. So what we learned from it, again, because learning is the key. So I'm not even sure that we need a screen for each channel. The shapes are bizarre and don't make any sense. And we're still missing some like key basic features like volume, settings, even you cannot even save and stuff like this. Okay, so after a few iterations, we've achieved version 2. Okay? You can see some design changes, but they were basically driven by the flow. Like as a designer, I keep like tidying up some small corners, but they weren't the goal of this. You can see the channel behavior changed a bit. I tried to play with all kind of stuff. There's no channel per screen. Okay, there's like a pause and play. And there's even some kind of settings that you can see with stuff. And there's even like there was even like a volume bar in the end, which was really clanky and didn't work. So what we learned from this one, again, sharing it, testing it, trying it out, seeing how it goes. Channels are still a bit awkward. Okay, it still doesn't work as much as we want to. All kind of like the other basic functionality, they work, but they still don't feel as much as we can, and we're not even sure that the entire thing works as a concept. Okay, so again, more iteration, more slow. You can see some design changes, but again, it wasn't led by design. It was led by the actual product thinking, functional thinking. Now I just sort of like ran it fast, but what we can see that this is, you can see the resemblance to what we had, but this is a completely new product, as we say. It even got the features, like all the missing features, like even loading a gem. You can see the volume is over there. The play and pause button are pretty cool. So after this one, in general, we felt pretty happy about the flow and the product, and we said that it's time to refine. Okay? Before we refine, and we talk about refinements, let's take a look back at what we had so far. So as you can see, from an hour in to, let's say, a few hours of working on it and feedback and stuff, all of them, which are out of sync, and it's okay, like represent almost a full flow of using the product. It's sort of like, I look at it sort of like a vertical slice. Okay, instead of like perfecting a single screen, I try to look at the flow of things. And for me, it reminds me a little bit of all this, and tell me if you haven't heard it, all this like MVP, minimum viable product diagram, like for example, this one made by Intercom, which what they're trying to say here, it's called start with a cupcake. Okay, so they're saying like, if you want to build something, instead of building all kind of very cool stuff, but you can't really use it as a whole, right? Like I cannot try the feeling and present it and see how users react to the feeling. Okay? Find the smallest vertical slice of the product, something that you can actually test and try. Like for example, a cupcake, and then goes with it. Okay, so in a way, it's a little bit like going over the process of the minimum viable product and applying it to the minimum viable product itself, right? Like instead of perfecting the screens, even behavior, you just look at the flow. A little bit about, let's take a general perspective of what we have here, like the cons and the pros. So, the cons. Okay, it doesn't fit all product. First of all, some product doesn't care about the flow, like it's not as relevant as for other products. And some product is just really, really hard to define the main flow. Second of all, sometimes when you're using tools that can animate really quickly, you have all kind of shortcomings coming from these tools, especially if you want to test it as a real prototype. Who here has done like usability testing? And let's say like really early on usability testing of prototypes. Okay, so sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy to do. A lot of the time it's really hard to process it, right? Like you want something that the users can actually try. And one more thing, animations are tricky. Okay, we tend to fall in love with animation and we tend to lose focus. Oops, it's mine. Okay. Great. So animations are tricky. Okay, as human beings, we love motion, okay, and we tend to lose focus of what we're actually trying to do. So it means sometimes falling in love in animation, and sometimes just investing a lot of time perfecting this like obscure movement that you're not going to use in the end, okay? On the pro sides, I think the biggest advantage is like you always work in context. You always see the full usage scenario. Like it helps you to keep in mind the big picture of what you're doing. Okay, it's much easier to test things very early on, right? Like after an hour, we can play with something that actually feels a little bit like the actual application. Also, especially if you're working in a company, it helps you to treat the animation as part of the product early on, right? A lot of the time, animations are pushed till the end. And a lot of the time, it doesn't cut the production level, right? A lot of the time, like this is the first thing that usually gets cut out when you're trying to release the product. And one more thing, especially again in companies, it's much easier to get buy-in for your ideas, right? Like you want your collaborator or colleagues to want to do what you're doing. It's much easier to show them this and to get the traction with it. So I'm really glad that you haven't used Keynote before, because I really love it for certain things, okay? And just quickly, some quick question before it. Have any of you been using other kind of like quick animation tools? Let's say Atomic, Principle. Principle? Yes, I love Principle again. Keynote is like a basic variation of Principle in that manner. It's much more mature as a product environment. Like it's really, really easy and fast to use. And I think that I can teach you Keynote in like 3 to 5 minutes. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to do a quick crash course in Keynote that hopefully going to make you be able to create products in Keynote just after you leave this door. So this is the Keynote interface. Like this presentation is actually done in Keynote. Like Sketch or like most common, I would say, design program today, which use this basic Mac interface, we have like a property panel here, like top bar and a big canvas. And we're going to start with like setting the document size. Okay, so if we're touching the document here on the top, so you can set the size. And you can even create any custom size you like for example, mobile sizes. And yes, if you have an iPhone, you can open the Keynote on the iPhone. Now again, for iPhone users, it's like a huge advantage, right? Because I just send the Keynote presentation to my friend, and he just like on this iPhone itself could test what we're doing in an instant. So let's assume that we've created this custom 375 by 667 iPhone X1, I would call it, screen. Now we're going to add a circle from this shape panel on the top. Okay. Once you touch and you select the object, you get its properties on the left panel, especially if you're in format. So you can style it and do whatever. I'm not going to go into it. I'm going to duplicate the slide over here. Okay, just copy paste or whatever. And now I'm going to just enlarge the circle. Okay, I'm going to go back now to the first slide, deselect the first one, just click anywhere and it would select the document itself. And now when I go to animate, I can choose, for example, magic move. And this one is like the real trick in everything we're doing, because what it does, it basically look at different screens, a bit like Principle and other concepts, and it finds similar object and magically animates between them. Okay, and as a designer, I can control like basic functions about this transition and the timing of it. Okay, so basically what we've created is just this really, really simple animation, but we've done it in like 7 seconds. Okay, now just playing with it a little bit more, okay, I can place text in all kind of like parallel position, right? And another like circle here, and then another screen, which it grows and it shows here, and another one like is a bit tilted to the side, and now it's tilted over here. And in less than a minute of work, I can create something still really rough, but it shows some effect of, especially when it comes to contextual animations. Okay, which when I say contextual animation, it's not animation that's meant for delight. Okay, I'm not trying to delight you with animation, but I'm trying to convey the contextual storyline with it. Okay, so I hope you're going to try it. And if you're going to try it in this early phase of prototyping, the most important thing is it's got to be fast. Okay, now let me demonstrate what I mean when I'm saying fast. here we've got two very similar yet really bright animations, okay? The right one was made using Magic Move, and the left one I just like didn't do it myself, just like the one who did it, animate each of the different parts of the screen. Now the real story is this one, okay? Because basically this one, which is probably a little cruder than this one, right? This one is more elegant, right? How it falls in parallel and everything. But this one took like less than 30 seconds to create, and this one took at least a few minutes to an experienced user. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about fast, right? Like Magic Move is the key. And I actually found, by the way, that if it's always on, it helps me as like a product designer to remain in context, right? Because if I'm creating a different screen and I'm playing it and Magic Move is on, then I see how my old screen transitioned to the next one, right? And I can catch all kind of inconsistencies and all kind of like weird behaviors. And especially, I found that it helps a lot, especially in mobile, when spatial awareness, right? Where everything's behaves in space, okay? It's really useful about it. And when it comes to creating even more delightful animation, like Andrew Haskin showed probably about 2 years ago, okay, he recreated the original material design that Google made just with Keynote animation. Okay, this one is with Keynote animation. And as you can see, it can be even like pretty cool animations, okay? I'm going to stop around here, but okay. So a quick recap of what we've done so far. So we talked about context, background context and immediate context. We talked about why 90% of products are crap, the context gap, and how we can bridge it using all kind of method, like research and lean and flow. We talked about the flow method, which is like just a quick shift of focus, like instead of focusing on the screens themselves, focusing on the whole of the product, of the flow. And why it's useful to show like full usage flows, like a vertical slices of the product. And we even did a really quick Keynote crash course. And I want to go back a little bit to how the Gem Looper, which is the app that we made, turned up. Any of you are like trying to create a mobile app right now or release a product app right now? Okay, so this is like, I'm going to follow up with a case study of what happened to us once we released everything, okay? So this is how it came out with some like minor tweaks of design and animation. Again, you can see that it's very similar. You can't really see, but trust me, it's very similar to what we had, but with the polish, then it looks like a completely different experience, but it's definitely based on all the hard lesson that we learned prototyping with this flow, okay? So after finishing, wow, that's look horrible. After finishing all kind of like keyword research for App Store optimization, okay, a quick thing, and marketing shots in all different sizes for all the different iPhones, okay? Then we finally released the app on March 1st of last year. And it seemed like we did a pretty good job with the like App Store optimization because we've been receiving a really low, it's like a between 150 and 200, but steady reach of like users that slowly started to use the app. And it all went along like this until somewhere around August 22nd, which Apple approached us and they want us to feature on the App Store. Okay, now basically, if you're trying to get a reach of user, this is the bonanza. Okay, because imagine like when users try and they're looking for applications, you're there in the front page. Okay, so from there we went to appear in almost all the app stores in the world in different categories. Like here you see new apps we love in the American store. Here you see like the music category where we also had like a big banner on top, which by the way is still on in Korea. For some reason they really like our app, which is cool. App Store even tweeted from their own, like the App Store Spanish account, they tweeted about us. They even write this themselves, right? We didn't give them any text. This is the Apple style, they do whatever they want, right? And as you can see from here, like it gave us a really boost of users, and can't really see the most interesting trend is over here, which is the 30-day active user, which you can see it reaching up at this point and then slowly declining, which by now is sort of like at a plateau around 9,000 users like each month, which is pretty cool. And we managed to capture, like, this was made last week or like 2 weeks ago. We were over 120,000 users, and like usage statistics are pretty cool. We're almost 6 minutes per user. This is an average, right? So it's like quite interesting. We don't know what to do with it. We don't really have time to follow it on, but it's, I don't know, like for us, it definitely showed that something about this is pretty interesting. Now, I don't know what about you guys, but like just go out there and create stuff. It's really fun and useful. Thank you. Questions? See, 40 minutes on the top. Thank you, guys.